For the authors, Joanne Molinaro is the author of Korean Vegan Cookbook and the Korean American social media star born and raised in Chicago. Molinaro adopted a plant-based diet in January 2016 and began the Korean Vegan as the passion project later that year. Her immensely popular TikTok and Instagram at The Korean Vegan incorporate her recipes with personal narration. She has been featured in Salon Healthy-ish by Bon Appetit and The Atlantic, Thrive and Veg World, and on the Food Network, CNN, BBC, and CNBC. Molinaro will be joined in conversation with Daniela Galarza, a staff writer for the food section at the Washington Post, who also writes Eat Voraciously, a newsletter offering easy dinner recipes, cooking tips, and inspiration. A former restaurant pastry chef, Galarza has been writing about food and cooking for more than 10 years. Please join me in welcoming to Politics and Prose, Joanne Molinaro and Daniela Galarza. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
Are going to make me cry. Oh my God. Hi. Thank you so much for coming out on a weeknight. Oh wow. I'm so thrilled. Thrilled. I'm so thrilled to be here with Daniela too.
I am so excited to be here. I told her I felt a little bit starstruck. I don't know anyone else.
No.
But as she said in the back, she's an open book.
I am an open book.
Pun probably intended. Why not? And yeah, it's a lot of fun to be out on a weeknight for me because I have a baby, and so I had to get a babysitter. But I'm like, oh, this is what other people do after 7 p.m.
I'm so glad I offered that.
Yes, no, you gave me an excuse to come out, and so thank you for that.
Of course.
Tell me, how is book tour going?
Book tour has been amazing. Back when I did this in 2021, we were in the middle of COVID. And so I had a very truncated schedule. I only got to see 3 places, really. And even in those 3 places, it was wonderful. I was like, oh my God, I get to meet all these people. But this time, I'm really taking my time. I'm getting to see so many of these cities that I didn't get to go to DC before. And we're also at a time, I think, right now where I am so grateful for the chance to meet with human beings who, know me, know what I stand for, and know what I talk about, and know what I believe in, and thus share so many of the same values. It's really, really important. So I'm really grateful. I'm particularly grateful to be in our nation's capital right now, because that means a lot to me, too.
Absolutely. I love what you've said recently on Instagram about immigrants and about being a child of immigrants. I'm also a child of immigrants. It's really resonated with a lot of us, I think, especially DC being the first city where ICE was put out on the streets. And, our neighbors are still being affected. But I think that just demonstrates, how much voices like yours are needed and wanted. And so, thank you for putting that voice out there and telling us these deeply personal but universal stories.
Yeah. Well, I think, people say this all the time now. Oh, storytelling is the thing. It's like a buzzword now, which kind of annoys me. But it's true. It's true. The things that stick are stories, these memories, right? But the reason they stick, I think, is vulnerability, right? One of my close friends said to me, the thing that I love most about you and that I find most beautiful about you, Joanne, is your vulnerability. And it's because I cry all the time. I'm always crying in the voice notes I send him. But I think also the other thing about that is just a darn good story. When I started telling stories on the Korean Vegan, it was less charged, because all I really wanted to do was to bring back the dinner party. We were in COVID, and I was like, the best thing about a dinner party, sure, the food needs to be good, but also like when you walk away and like, that person sitting next to me said the coolest thing, shared the most interesting story, and that's really what I wanted to do. But I wanted to do it in a way that invited conversation about things that were maybe a little bit more challenging. For me, the immigrant story, and of course the latent racism that is built into the story of immigrants in our country, is that challenging conversation that I want to have over food, where we are naturally disarmed.
And as you say in the book, it has been, for many families, a language of love. I love the introduction and how you touch on the way your maternal grandmother, the way she communicated care and generosity and attention and especially love was by asking you to eat this, presenting you with something that she thought you might like. And you struggle with that. It's a through line through the book, right? That food is big enough to be its own language, and it's wonderful for that, but is that enough? I love that it even ends in a way that sort of wraps that up. But how do you feel about that today? Because you wrote this book a year ago at least, right?
Yes.
So yeah, in the time since, where have you settled?
That's such a great question. And when I wrote that essay, I actually wanted to name the book Eat This. But my editor, which I didn't even think of it this way, because sometimes I do think through Korean, which was my first language. And my grandmother used to say to me all the time, "이거 먹어, 이거 먹어, 이거 먹어, 먹어, 먹어." That means eat this, right? And like I say in the opening essay, that to me meant I love you. It meant I'm sorry. It meant I'm proud of you. It meant I'm worried about you. It meant stop being sick. It meant all of these different things. So I was like Lucia to my, American editor. I was like, I want the book to be named Eat This. And she's like, well, then people are going to think you want to punch them in the face. Like, that's what they're, eat this. And I was like, what? I never even, that never crossed my mind. So that was knocked out as a potential title. And we, went with homemade, because the idea I wanted to convey was the thing that my grandmother meant every time she said, "이거 먹어, eat this." What I have heard from my therapist is that, this is probably a very popular concept now, is that as adults, sometimes we need to parent ourselves. We need to figure out what were the gaps in our parents' parenting, without judging them, if possible. And I'm fortunate in that I've always known that my parents loved me. And I do consider myself lucky, because I think there are many people who question that. My own parents, my father often questions whether his father loved him. And so I know that's not something to be taken for granted, but because I always had that, it was a lot easier for me to say, okay, well, I'm going to mine through where my parents maybe could have done a little bit better. And in one of those things, it was, yes, being more vocal about their love. My mother could never say it. And I would even ask her, I'm like, how come you can never say I love you? Why don't you just say it? Like, all of my friends' moms say it. How come you don't say it? And she's like, well, I care for you. I care for you. And it was like, okay, I guess that's the best my mother can do. And I think, for better or worse, I was just saying this in response to another question, I've now sort of adopted that. That's the language that I now have been conditioned to learn. I have trouble now saying, I love you. Ask my husband. He's always saying things like, I love you at the end of phone conversations. I'm like, why do you need to tag that on? I don't know, and now you're making me feel like I have to say it back. And so it's harder for me. And I find I'm moving into my grandma's language is just like, I will make you bibimbap instead. Here's this wonderful bowl of pasta that I slaved over all day. That is my language of love. I think that in some ways, I'm much more forgiving of my parents than I was when I was 6, 10, 15 years old and asking them, why won't you just say I love you? Because I'm now at that point. But I also think that language is very powerful. Words are so, so powerful. If you're able to use them, why not? Why not? And sometimes I wish, or I at least wonder, I wonder what our relationship would look like and what kind of woman would I be today had my parents been much more vocal about their love of me instead of just symbolic, I guess. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so interesting to think about. Like, it's like that, if this one thing had been different about my childhood, would I be the same person? Mm-hmm. Would I even be here right now, right? And I love this idea of thinking about it from language, from the perspective of language, because you're a storyteller. You have an essay in the book about the importance of words. Are there words that you feel you've hesitated to share when you've been writing about food? Is there types of dishes? Are there styles of cooking that you've felt, I can't put this out there yet?
Oh, that's a great question, Daniela. I think that generally no. And I think one of the, and I know not all of you are vegan. And in fact, I think most of the people who follow me are not, which I sort of take as like a thing of pride. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. But one of the wonderful things about the vegan community is how open they are to trying anything and everything. I mean, whatever sticks to the wall and doesn't involve animal products, they'll eat it. And I love that. I think that was why my doenjang jjigae was one of the most popular recipes in my first cookbook, which, I mean, you could have knocked me over with a feather when I literally saw like this cop in Atlanta, Georgia, a white cop in Atlanta, Georgia, making my doenjang jjigae every week for his wife, not vegan by any means. And I was like, wow, I mean, I never would have guessed that. And I think like, part of the reason for that is because when people buy a book that is vegan, they know they're going to have to push through some of those discomforts. Like my own husband used to think like tofu was like not a word that I could use in our house, and now he loves tofu because he went vegan. And so like because of that sort of safeguard, I don't feel inhibited in sharing recipes, in sharing methodologies. I'm also very honest about it. I learned so much of my cooking through the Food Network, which is a very white way of cooking. I mean, it's, I use a lot of extra virgin olive oil. People may not like that, but you know what? I learned that when you mix it with sesame oil, it increases that burn point so that you don't get rancid oil. You don't get that bitterness. And if you're a Korean ajumma and you're really fast, then fine, just use sesame oil, But to me, I was like, let's give a little grace to our cooking, use a little extra virgin olive oil. I like to sear my food before, I like to coat my vegetables in doenjang before adding the broth, as opposed to the very Korean way, which is to add the doenjang afterwards. Again, these are like little things that I picked up. I was just writing an essay this morning on whether my food is even really Korean, because a lot of people say, oh, your food's not really Korean. And I'm like, well, I'm not Korean. And, the food that I make with my own hands, it's probably American, even if it's kimchi, like that's me. I'm not going to hide from that. I think it's better to just own it and be honest about it.
Absolutely, yeah. I love this idea of like, why do we have to put ourselves into a box, or why do we let other people put us into a box? Like, make the food you want to make, and if people want to make it because it's delicious, then they will. Have you ever, in an audience, asked for a show of hands of who's vegan?
No, who's vegan?
Who's vegan?
Oh,
ooh.
Wow.
But it's really only like 50%, if that, like 40.
If that, yeah. That always makes me so happy. Like no, like shade to the vegans. Like you guys are my diehard, loyal, like safety fans. I love you guys. But also like, I'm just so happy that people are willing to try my food. That makes me so happy.
That was one of the things we were talking about in the back briefly, was how hard it is when you go to Korea to eat vegan.
Oh God, yeah. Uh-huh.
And yes, and my very like American-centered perspective on Korean food is that it's barbecue, right? It's meat. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how you redefined Korean food for such a broad audience?
Well, I think there are a lot of there's always flattening. I always call it flattening that happens when there's mass proliferation or commodification of anything, right? We're seeing an explosion of Korean food, K-pop, K-beauty, K-everything right now. And when you go to scale in that situation, then people are going to start cutting corners, right? Because it's the only way to scale in a cost-efficient way. And we live in a capitalist society, and people are always looking to maximize the margin, even if it means cutting the quality of the product that's being sold, right? So to me, it's like, when I see, everybody's making tteokbokki, everyone's eating tteokbokki, right? And then I try it at the grocery store. I'm like, this is not the tteokbokki that I remember eating in Korea, So I think in that there's sort of an inevitable loss in translation, going back to this language idea. I see that also with the popularity of Korean barbecue and its centrality in what people view as Korean cuisine when there's a very long, 1,000-year rich history of Buddhist temple food, which is inherently plant-based in Korea that nobody ever seems to remember or talk about unless you're literally in Korea. And then, of course, the fact that in my own life and in many Korean Americans' lives, Korean barbecue is like what you ate at graduation or like your birthday, like maybe Christmas. That's not what you ate every day. What you ate every day was like muchim, which is like seasoned vegetables and, stews with tofu. Fish, certainly we're a peninsula, so yes, there's going to be seafood. And I think the reason, if anything, that being vegan is hard in Korea is not the meat. It's actually the fish sauce and the shrimp paste that makes its way into almost everything, which makes sense, right? A, we're a peninsula, and B, we believe in fermentation. That is what makes sure that an island, that a peninsula that has suffered so much poverty and hunger in its recent history has enough food for a very, 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 very long time. Fish sauce and shrimp paste helps to preserve a lot of that. So I think, it makes sense. My kind of take on these things, again, I hesitate to call it Korean food. I've literally been thinking about this so much. There's this concept called sonmat, which means taste of the hand. And it's literally when the flavor of the hand that is cooking the food seasons the food, right? And if my hand is American, then isn't the food that I'm preparing with my hands always, at least in part, American, right? But I think what I'm trying to do is to just add to an ongoing conversation about cuisine. But mostly I'm trying to help people remember you can love the food, but you should also try and love the people who brought you that food. That is so critical, especially now in all of the struggle that we're having with what American identity is.
Oh, 100%. I really felt that one because, just everything that's been in the news, but also just being the child of immigrants and feeling very much like, where do you belong? And are you allowed to do this or that or write about this or that? And I so appreciate your perspective on this. That idea of the hand, but that it literally means sort of like the person who's attached to the hand. But is it at all also just this, like the notion that like your seasoning is going to be different from your mother's seasoning? And I love that's such a beautiful concept.
It is a cool concept. I literally son means hand and mat means taste. So it is literally taste of the hand. And I mean, like, if you think about it, you're like, that's kind of gross. Like, I don't want your germy cooties in my food. But we're seeing this now, like, we've seen people who get very angry with the thought of Americans eating with their hands. People have literally been called, and I literally just saw it today, that one of the mayoral candidates in New York, he's being attacked for eating with his hands. And he cannot be an American mayor because he eats with his hands. And to me, I mean, like, I was like, have you ever eaten a pizza or a hamburger?
Right.
Like, I don't know how you eat those things, but I eat donuts with my hands. I just had one from Donut Run the other day. I ate them with my hands, okay? So, yeah, like, I don't really understand that, but I know what is the intent. The intent is to other people. It's to exclude people from the conversation about what it means to be American, and it is done through food. And that I find so offensive because I think the idea of America was always meant to be, let's invite everyone into this conversation, especially refugees. I mean, the refugee story is so integral to my book, and the foods that I introduce people to are part and parcel of my grandmother's story, my mother's story, my father's story, my grandfather's story. And to see it weaponized in that way is very sad.
No, it is. And thank you for putting voice to those stories. I mean, have you done a reading as part of one of these book talks?
I have not. Actually, I've literally never done a read. I mean, I did one for an Instagram reel the other day, but no, I haven't.
I think, well, I don't want to give too much away because this is one of those books that I don't know if anybody's familiar with Patty Hinich. She once did a podcast. She's a local chef here who writes and talks about Mexican cuisine, but she once did a podcast all about what she called bedtime cookbooks. And so this is her list of cookbooks that she likes to read before bed, because cookbooks you can read any cookbook, obviously, whenever you want, but your books are the books that you want to read before bed. You want to cuddle up with them. You want to read them aloud to maybe somebody who's in the room with you. You want to share these stories. They're just so beautiful. And then the next morning, you want to wake up and cook the food.
Literally could not have had a better endorsement for my book. Can somebody cut and paste that and send it to me in an email, please?
So no, let's not do a reading. Let's keep chatting. You mentioned talking to your editors about creating a name for this cookbook, and it wasn't going to be Eat This because of the connotations. And so it's Korean vegan homemade, which makes it instantly recognizable from a marketing perspective. Always important, right? But the homemade part, it could give you the impression that these are easier, or maybe these are home style dishes, or maybe these are dishes you like to make at home. And you write a little bit about that, but maybe you can give people a little more teaser, just a little bit more explanation of how you differentiate between this one and the other.
So I think the first book was really meant to be an introduction to what I think of as traditional Korean dishes, like, doenjang jjigae, kimchi jjigae, japchae. These are like your quintessential Korean foods, right? And while I do make those often at home, and most Korean, ajumas, they're going to be, they will have that in their arsenal. They'll know that pat, right? That's not always the kind of food that I turn to. I was born and raised in Chicago, so I love French fries. And I also love mac and cheese. I love spaghetti and meatballs. And I mean, these are things that my grandma was not making for us, okay? But I learned to sort of make for myself. And again, this idea of like parenting yourself, like that was always central to what I was trying to convey, which was, okay, comfort yourself. The other kind of concept that comes up in that first essay that I write about my grandmother is a feeling that I think many immigrant children have, which is wanting so desperately to be parented by your parents, but also this almost contradictory feeling of needing to parent your parents. I felt so protective of my mom and dad and my grandmothers growing up, because I was like, well, they don't speak English like I do, and I need to be their voice for them. I need to translate for them. I need to do all these things for them. And even with my grandmother, when she, in that original essay, when she comes to pick me up at school, she couldn't speak on the phone to the nurse because she didn't speak English. So I had to get on the phone. I had to explain to Grandma, you need to come pick me up. Well, I don't have a car. Well, I don't know what to do. I'm really, really sick. And the nurse won't let me go back. And so Grandma comes to pick me up. And I just remember I remember her putting her arm around me, and we had to walk all the way back home together. And I'm so sick, and because my parents worked during the day, they didn't have, my grandma didn't drive, and I just remember thinking, it's just me and grandma against the whole world, and we have to look out for each other. She has to look out for me, but I'm a little kid, but I have to look out for my grandma, and that feeling is really, really difficult. And I think when I come up with these dishes, it's like comforting that anxiety, like I want to feed you to make that anxiety feel a little bit more manageable, because those are humongous feelings to have as a child, feeling like you need to protect your mom and dad and your grandma, your grandpa, your uncle, your aunt. I mean, my whole family, I felt like I have to protect them. So that's what I mean. Like when I come up with homemade, it's like all the dishes that make me feel a little bit more comfortable with my position in the world. Doesn't make it go away. It just makes it a little bit easier to deal with, like baked French fries with kimchi cheese.
Oh my God, I cannot wait to eat that.
I think that might be the runaway favorite right now. I've seen so many people make it already, and it always looks amazing.
I've heard, yes, I have a friend who made it, and I was like, I can't believe you didn't invite me over. So, wait, no, there was something you said that I wanted to ask about. Oh, it's about this food being sort of a way of fortifying you against the world and strengthening your resolve against those feelings of not necessarily isolation, but difference or alienation, maybe. I love that through line, and it made me think of the banchan chapter and how those could be like the soldiers in the front.
Oh, I love that.
They're like the chess pieces, the pawns. And you have the rest of the army behind them, but let's talk about banchan.
Oh, I love banchan. Banchan is, I always say banchan is the soul of Korean food. And I think people again think, oh, Korean barbecue, like bacon and like, skewered meat and all that stuff. And like, don't get me wrong, like I loved all those things too. I was a happy girl on birthday. But for me, like the first piece of food I always go for, and if you read the first essay in my first book, you'll know it's the same one that my mother reaches for, and it's that little 콩나물, that is the mung bean sprout. That is the first piece of food that goes into my mouth. And I don't know what it is that's so alluring about a mung bean sprout. Maybe it's because of all those many hours my grandmother made me snip the tails off of them when I was growing up. But like this perfectly seasoned mung bean sprout, it just sets my whole mouth up ready, for this experience. Banchan to me, and there are many, like I feel like it's very similar to like Ethiopian food or Indian cuisine, where you're really supposed to fill your plate with lots of little things as opposed to protein, vegetable, carb, I can't eat that way. I want my spoon to have all of the components. I want it to feel savory. I want it to have a little sweet. I want it to have sour. I want there to be fattiness. I want there to be even a little bit of that blandness from the rice to counterbalance some of these very strong flavors. And then, of course, you got to wash it down with a sip of your stew or your soup, right? That is the perfect Korean bite of food. Banchan is how you compose that bite. And so it's a great analogy. It's marshaling, deploying your, culinary or gastronomical, army to create that most comforting bite of food. And I think we do need comfort. Oh my God, we need to be comforted right now. We need to be strong. We need to be tough. We need to be smart. We need to be strategic, all of these things to deal with everything that's happening. But we also need to comfort each other. We need to soothe each other too.
And stay strong. And I think that, I remember, this is going to sound silly, but when I started eating Korean food with Korean friends when I was younger, banchan would come out and it was a free offering. And I always thought, like, this is really generous. Like, they're giving us a lot of free stuff. Like, I have to tip well or something.
And it's refillable.
Like, I feel really bad. Like, somebody made all of these things, and like, I don't know how to make them, but wow, they look really complex. And now I'm seeing restaurants start to charge for it, and I really appreciate that, because I know how hard they are now, and how, I mean, it's not necessarily that they are hard, but time is an ingredient. And time is money. Time is our most valuable resource. And so when I look at an array of banchan, especially at someone's table at their home, it is like a gift. It is really such
It is really a
thing.
gift. You know, when, I don't know if any of you watch Korean dramas, but I'm obsessed with them. And, you know, when the mother comes to the daughter's house, she always carries a bag or sometimes a suitcase, and she unzips it and outflows all the Tupperware. And that, I mean, they don't say I love you, but that is I love you. All the Tupperware. When you open a fridge and you see the Tupperware in a Korean fridge, that person is loved. That person is very, very loved. You know, when my mom comes to visit me in LA now, when she leaves, there's so much Tupperware stacked
beautiful.
neatly in my fridge. And it's because she spent 2 weeks in my house making all the different panchans. And panchan, as you alluded to, it not only lasts, right, but it also in some cases does take time. Kimchi takes time to taste the way it should. Gakdugi takes time to taste the way it should. Gendip takes time to taste the way that it should. So it's designed to not just last, but it's meant to be optimized through fermentation and pickling over several days.
And that makes it so good for you, too.
It does.
This is something that's missing from the American palate as well. I mean, forget the meat and 3 or whatever, but we're missing our fermented foods. When I learned more about that, I was just stunned at how much better I felt when I started incorporating kimchi and similar things into my diet.
Well, I mean, they're very good for you. They're good for your gut, obviously, but also, like, you know, they're not. Again, don't get me wrong, I love fried food. I love French fries, okay? But, you know, they should be balanced with, you know, they're basically oil-free, most of these. Muchims have a little bit of sesame oil, but kimchi for certain, it's oil-free. And so you're getting an incredibly healthy bite of food. It's also packed with fiber, all sorts of good things for your microbiome. I mean, I could go on and wax poetic on all of the different ways that kimchi is good for you. And, you know, there are also ways, if you're on like a low sodium diet, there are ways to incorporate that. The good news is so much of the salt is actually washed out during the process.
Right, no, and I love but then it adds this acidity. The fermentation is so complex in most of the ones that I've tasted, and certainly the ones in your book too. And it's like this, it's refreshing, it's appetite opening, and I feel very much like it's very fortifying.
I love that. Appetite opening is such a great way of putting it, because I do think it's like, oh, well, now I need to eat something else, you know, to complement this very, very pungent flavor in my mouth. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the way you were describing the rice as bland, but you need that. You need that other
totally.
foil, right?
Yeah, I never, anytime I have people who are unfamiliar with Korean food coming over for a dinner party, and they're like, oh, no, I don't need rice. And I'm like, yes, you do. You cannot eat these things that I prepared without rice unless you want your tongue to fall out. So, yes, you do.
I love rice, and my son also loves rice, and he just started talking. He says, rice.
Oh,
More rice.
perfect.
Right. I wanted to switch gears a little bit. Maybe touching. We're going back a little bit to touch on the storytelling, but you work in so many different mediums. You've translated, you know, the stories from your childhood, from your life, into print, into video and film and photography, and just this incredible, you know, live presentations like this. How do you feel about AI?
Oh, it's not where I thought this was going. Wasn't prepared for that. Okay. So some of you may know, if you're newsletter family, that my first book, it looks like, was ripped off, it looks like, by AI. A good friend of mine, Eric Kim, he writes for the New York Times. He texted me one day with WTF and a screenshot of a book called The Korean Vegan Cookbook on Amazon. And, you know, it wasn't the first. There was like probably 20 books out there called The Korean Vegan Cookbook. You can't copyright a title of a book like The Korean Vegan Cookbook. So I was like, man, unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about it. At least that's what my publisher told me the first time that happened. But then I looked at it, and number one, the chapters were identical to mine, including the Korean, because you guys know I put Korean in my book as well, especially when they're Korean words, right? So the chapters are identical. I don't know, even copied the Korean for the chapter titles. And then I was like, okay, this is beyond infuriating. The font, the color of the font was identical to my first book. And it was some person named Rachel Issy. And there was no trace of Rachel Issy on the internet, which is virtually impossible these days. And then on top of that, somebody was kind enough to actually download a copy of the book. And they're like, yeah, these aren't even vegan. It was just like beyond, right? So then I called my publisher and was like, look, I know you said that nothing could be done about the previous copycats, but like this one literally has my chapters, like things like bang, like who, that's not a generic chapter title. Bang is the Korean word for bread. And so luckily Amazon agreed and they took it down immediately. But that was my first real encounter with the insidiousness of AI, and raised lots of questions about how do we prove our humanness anymore when AI seems to be getting so much better at pretending to be human, and in fact that there are so many humans who are readily willing to adopt it, in perhaps masking their own inhumanity. I don't know. I mean, I find part of the answer has to be these types of things, gathering, and hopefully we are far, far away from the times when, you know, we literally have droids coming into these events and pretending to be human. But, you know, that is unfortunately, it seems to be where we're headed, where the only way we can prove our humanness is to literally be physically present with each other, to show ourselves as human. I think underlying gathering, of course, is community. Like, I was very smart, I guess is one way of putting it, when 4 years ago when I came out with book one, I was like, dude, I got to start writing a newsletter. I need to cultivate something outside of social media where I'm directly talking to my community. You know, in leading up to today, I sent out a newsletter this morning where I literally just talked about, I ate donuts and then I ate Indian food and then I watched Bake Off for 4 hours. And, you know, here's a picture. And so many people responded to it. They're like, oh my God, it sounded like you have a great day. Here's a picture of my cat. She really loves your book. Like that's like about as human as it gets, right? I mean, like that to me, I feel like that has to be part of the answer. I'm not saying that AI doesn't have its uses. You know, I'm a former full-time attorney, and I do think that, you know, for the sake of our clients and the billable hour, if we are able to streamline our very expensive services by using AI, then it behooves us to do that for the sake of our clients. But I see too many who are willing to sacrifice creativity and the hard work that earns your title as a creator. Again, we live in a capitalistic world. We're willing to do that because of the margins. Those margins become fatter when we require less effort of the people who create things, unfortunately. And that has a very diluting effect from the top down. So I don't know. I don't have a very good answer other than let's keep doing stuff like this. This is part of the answer. Mm-hmm.
Yes, clap to that. I mean, I think it's may we never sit in a room with a droid.
Yeah. I mean, did anyone else see Battlestar Galactica? I mean, I did. I love that show.
It does. It does feel. I mean, I do think that there are some dystopian elements of just thinking about the near and far future of this, because, but I mean, as a person who also writes a newsletter and gets emails back from people, and feels like I have a small community because of it, I don't understand how that can be replicated by a machine, and it scares me to think that that's what a lot of people, the direction a lot of people are interested in going.
Well, look, here's the thing is I try so hard not to judge people. I'm a business owner now. I started a beauty brand a couple of months ago, and I've had to juggle being on book tour, publishing this book, promoting the book, while also being the CEO and founder of a small business. So I have to send out a newsletter every Thursday, KV Beauty Rituals, that talks about my beauty rituals and, gets people, like, makes them not forget that, we have products. Like, that's my job as the business owner, right? And like, I do not ever let AI write anything, because my community, they're smart. They can recognize it. But that's not to say if another small business owner who doesn't have the luxury of having her husband, do so much of their website, do so much of the work that, I don't need to pay for my own website developer. I, save so much money doing this, and that. They're strapped for cash. They're strapped for time. But they need to make ends meet, and they need to send out a newsletter every week. If they're going to use AI to write that newsletter, who am I to judge them? It's a tool, that they have. Maybe I'm the silly one for not using AI, to send out my newsletter, even though I'm strapped for time and I'm a little busy right now. I don't know. Like, I feel like, I don't know, the answer remains murky. I think the overwhelming sense that I have is fear. We have seen how quickly things that are repulsive and repugnant to human nature can become so quickly normalized and incorporated into our every single day. I heard this really funny anecdote at lunch today that some man is going around playing the the stormtrooper song behind the National Guard and just following them around with it. And it's funny, but my understanding is he's doing it because he's so worried that we'll become desensitized to their presence here, that it'll just become a part of everyday life. And I'm worried about that with AI. Like, I think it's already slipped into things. I mean, like, how many of you guys go onto ChatGPT? I mean, I was asking ChatGPT a couple questions earlier the other day. So it worries me. It makes me anxious. It also makes me somewhat relieved that I will hopefully not be alive when we have droids wandering around. I that's kind of where I'm at. I'm assuming many of you probably feel the same way.
There's definitely a lot of uncertainty, but I think we all appreciate the realness and the authenticity you bring to the work that you put out. Authenticity about food or Korean food or defining it completely aside, but the authenticity of you. I think we all appreciate that, and I don't think that's something a machine can copy. And so
that is the answer, Daniela. That is the perfect answer. Everyone, I always say this, you are all the author of your own stories. You are all the authors of your own stories. There's nobody who can tell it the way that you can. This is one great, I talk about him all the time, David Epstein. He wrote this wonderful book called Range, and he talks about how so many people who have experienced the greatest success in their various industries, they started their thing when they were like in their 40s, in their late 30s, 40s, 50s. And the reason is because they kept failing at everything that they tried before they got to that point. And by the time they got to that point, they had a catalog of failures that they used to become this unique version of who they are, right? And by the time they were 40s and 50s, they were the only people who could supply whatever it is that they could supply, because it was just a mishmash of all of these little things that they had tried along the way, that they tried and failed at, tried and failed at, And I think that's true about everything. There's nobody who can tell your story the way that you can tell your story. It's just that not everybody feels the safety they need to feel in order to share that story. And that is the sad part. Like, I wish I could change things so that we were all given that opportunity, the safety, financial security, healthcare, equality, the same voice, the same weight in voice, because that's what we deserve. But unfortunately, that's not the world that we live in. And so we have to speak louder than other people.
And eat well.
Yes, eat very good food. Mm-hmm.
And with that, I want to thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
For inviting me to speak with you.
Thank you.
Really, really lovely. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And we're opening it up to questions, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Any questions?
Oh, sorry. Hello.
Hi.
I am Stephanie, and I drove all the way from West Virginia
Oh, my God.
to come and see you. I'm the only vegan in my town.
Oh, well, God bless you.
Yes. And I've been following you for years. I admire so much about you.
Thank you.
You said it. There's the realness, the rawness. With the success of your second cookbook, how is your imposter syndrome these days with all your success?
Oh, Stephanie, that's such a wonderful question, and it means that you have definitely been following along. I think imposter syndrome for me is one of those unconquerable things, unfortunately. When I talk about parenting yourself and the gaps that you find in parenting, I think imposter syndrome is unfortunately a residue of something like perhaps not being told enough by my parents, oh, I love you, you're worthy, you're valuable, you're precious. My therapist tells me I need to say these things out loud to myself all the time. And I think that sometimes, Stephanie, like we're unfortunately saddled with things forever, for the rest of our lives because of these things that happen to us in our childhood. And that can be sad, a little bit sad, and it's okay to be sad about that. But I think also it's an opportunity. And for me, imposter syndrome seems to be one of those unconquerable things that I will have forever, no matter what. It's the moving goalposts, whatever you want to call it, right? You know, that was one of the nice things about a legal career, was the goalposts were so clear, you know, boom, 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 right? And then once you make partner, you're like, now what? And I think that with this book, I shrink from it sometimes too, because it is so like naked in some ways. Like I share so much of myself and I'm like, oh, what if people don't like it? You know, what if they don't like what they see? What if they get angry by what they see? What if they're mad that I used extra virgin olive oil? You know, like there's a little bit of that. And I think, you know, I wrote in my essay for my newsletter, I was doing these launch week notes where I literally wrote every single day from my launch week. And I wrote, I know I should be happy. And there was a young woman walking behind me in Boston. She's like, I'm so happy. And I'm like, oh, I wonder why she's so happy. And I was like, I wonder when the last time I felt that way was. And I realized it's been a really long time. And I think that part of it is because I believe so fundamentally that I don't deserve it. And that's a really hard lesson to unlearn. And it's one that requires daily confrontation. It's not something that you just get cured from. And you know, one of the things I conclude in that essay was sometimes, not all the time, because it's not all the time, but sometimes happiness or the lack of it is a choice. And I have to remind myself of that. My imposter syndrome, I can either shrink from it or I can confront it. But it is there. It's always there. But thank you for that beautiful question and the implicit acknowledgement in it. And thank you for coming all the way. Oh my God.
Hi. Excuse me. I'm Lauren. I only drove from Northwest DC.
Oh, well, still a drive.
Still a big fan. I am really curious if you could talk about using the word vegan, because it seems in general, you know, veganism really had a moment. It was really trendy. It was really popular. There's a lot of vegan cookbooks that came out, and the tide is really shifting now to the opposite direction. So I'm wondering, you know, when you have such a strong brand with the word vegan, what does that mean? Why do you keep using it?
I mean, I I did and my husband can attest to this because he's the one who called me the Korean vegan and told me to start a YouTube channel called The Korean Vegan, right? And so I've, talked back and forth with him, especially in the past year, like, do you think I should change my brand to just Joanne Molinaro and just get rid of the Korean? No. Like, are you kidding? And I'm kind of inclined to agree with that. I mean, look, if people want to feel some sort of way about my veganism, all it takes is literally 30 seconds on my feeds of any of my social media platforms to understand that vegan is just one aspect of what I do and who I am. It's a big aspect, certainly, because I'm a food creator and I create vegan food. There is that, but it's also Korean. It's Korean vegan food like miyeokguk and 된장찌개 and kimchi, all of those things, right? But to me, vegan. I always go back to the story that's in my first book about when I met Jeongwan S님. She's the Buddhist monk in Korea. I spent some time with her at her temple when I was there in 2019. And she was like, vegan, what does that even mean? I've been eating this way forever. People have been eating this way for 1,000 years. And it's like, we just don't want to harm. That's literally the whole fundamental thing. We want to cause the least amount of harm to every living thing, even the plants, We want to do the least amount of harm. And that is so central to what I define as veganism, because I think it offers so much grace to people in terms of you determine, and be honest about it. You determine what that looks like, the least amount of harm, right? Be honest about it. Let's be honest about it. But in that honesty, the woman from Mali who is undergoing a very different life than mine in Los Angeles, that definition of doing the least amount of harm is going to look very, very different than the, middle upper class, Asian American woman living in the suburb of Los Angeles, right? Working out of her home. And I think that honesty is important. And I think veganism is about compassion across the board for all things, for all living things, but it is also compassion for humans. Fundamentally, it has to include that as well. And so that's why I talk about the things that I talk about, because I can't not talk about those things. I mean, I don't know how to not talk about those things. You mentioned like my authenticity. There's this great moment in this awesome Korean drama called My Mister. It's the best Korean drama of all time. And this girl, she killed somebody at the very early part of her life in self-defense. And she spends the rest of her adult life being terrified that someone's going to find out that she did it. And she says, sometimes I think the anxiety that somebody will find out that I did this is worse than the consequences of me just confessing that I did it. And that's my whole life. The anxiety of being fake is so much more costly to me than just letting it all hang out there. If you can't accept the fact that I'm vegan, that I incorporate a vegan diet and a vegan life, then I don't know. Shame on you, I guess. So I don't see the point of changing it. I don't know what it will do for the vegan movement. Obviously, it's going through a thing right now. We're not in the best place, but it's really more a personal choice than it is about trying to say something specific. Oh yeah, we had a question here. Okay, Ando, is that right? Yeah, Ando from the DMV area. Thank you so much for coming. Any particular recipe in the book comes to mind for a person who is not a vegan and doesn't like fermented foods? Okay, I've got you. I got you. Okay, so I would say so I just wrote. I've been writing this essay. I've been working on it for a while, and I'm writing it about sujebi. Sujebi is hand-torn noodles in Korean. And it's actually, I discovered, very similar to an Italian dish, which is also hand-torn noodles. And it's a dish that I recreated in a very non-Korean way because my mother hates sujebi. The reason she hates sujebi is because it was what my grandmother used to make for them when they literally had no food. They had nothing. It was like they had flour, water, salt, and water and onions. So she would literally make this soup out of nothing but that. And my mom said that it tasted like dirt. And she was like, why would you want to include that in your cookbook? It tastes like dirt. And I'm like, well, let me make a version that doesn't taste like dirt, and more importantly, doesn't remind you of this time in your life, right? So I made 2 sujibis. One of them is in a brown sage butter mushroom red wine reduction. It's gorgeous. It's delicious. I made it the other day for a dinner party, and I was like, God, this is so good. It's really good. It's really easy to make. The other, and the sujibi, the hand-torn noodles, is easy. Just put it in a food processor and let that gluten form. It'll be fine. And then the other one that I made was like a take on kale Tuscan, the Tuscan kale white bean soup, which I love. But what I use a whole bunch of vegan Parmesan for it as well. And what I do is I add just a little dollop of doenjang, which if you like miso soup, don't worry, it is fermented, but it's not like kimchi fermented, you know? It's like a very mellow fermentation, and it just does a wonderful job of making that broth super velvety and soft and comfortable, and just like you can't stop eating it. But it's got kale, it's got white beans, it's got all those things, and of course it's got your hand-torn noodles in it. It's so delicious. So those are 2 that I would recommend.
Hi, I'm Carla.
Hi, Carla.
Just came here from Virginia, I suppose.
Oh, wow.
Also have a new baby, so congratulations.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
Debated bringing him, but he's definitely asleep right now, hopefully. And I guess I have so many questions for you. I mostly follow you on social media, but I'm very glad to hear there's a newsletter. And I guess I have so many questions, but I suppose my main one has to do with your authenticity, and also, I suppose, with your bravery. I really appreciate that you're one of the few creators that discusses the current political situation and how terrifying it is, and the effect on immigrants and all Americans, really. And I suppose I was wondering, how do you sort of balance the feel, or what would you advise to other creators who might want to speak about these things but are so afraid of the repercussions of it?
Well, I think that's a great question, and their fear is legitimate. I will be very candid. I did not have the best financial year this year, and as a part-time influencer, if you will, and content creator, I used to derive much of my income from brand deals, but brands are not comfortable working with people who talk about ICE and Donald Trump every day like I do. And I'm very opinionated when it comes to these issues. And, there had to come a time where I was just like, look, who am I? Why did I start the Korean Vegan? Did I do it to make money? No. I started the Korean Vegan when I was a partner at the law firm, and I was making money fine. I started the Korean Vegan because, I'll be very candid with this audience, I hope you guys don't mind, Donald Trump was elected in 2016, and I started sharing stories about my family because I saw that there were too many people in my country who were unwilling to recognize that my family was American. They basically said, you're not American. That's what I saw, and it wounded me so much. It hurt me so much because I felt like I woke up in a country I didn't recognize anymore, and shame on me for having those rose-tinted glasses for so much of my life, for being so naive about what my country actually was. But that was a wake-up call to me. And so I started sharing these stories because I needed people to see with compassion. I needed people to see with empathy, not with rage, not with fear, not with anxiety, not with greed, but with what I believed was an inherent capacity to empathize with the immigrant story. And so some of them, I said this in a different interview, like I'm always the little Asian woman at the law firm they never see coming, because I never come to my witnesses being aggressive or bullying or demanding my admissions. I always butter them up. And I always get to them with a story or a funny anecdote about my tattoo or something like that. And by the time they don't even realize they're eating out of my hands, because that's what I do. That's my strength. And so that's what I did with my with the Korean vegan. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to tell you what to believe. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I'm not going to tell you why I'm as American as you are. I'm just going to tell you a good story. I'm going to tell you a story that you can relate to no matter what color you are, how old you are, what gender you are. You can relate to it because everybody feels fear, everybody feels loss, everybody feels grief, everybody feels hurt, alone, and everybody also needs to eat, okay? So these are all of the things we have in common. Let's build on that. It is so hard sometimes to still believe that these days. I sometimes wonder if what I started doing is good enough, whether I'm being vocal enough, especially in connection with the book launch. It's very difficult. But I just believe like better to put my heart out there and at least find my people who are willing to meet me where I'm at than stay silent and constantly afraid. But at the same time, I cannot judge everyone. I cannot judge influencers. I cannot judge other creators. I don't know what their financial situation is. I just don't know. And I also don't know what their immigration status is. I don't know if their families are, in some sort of limbo. It doesn't take a lot these days to draw the ire of the government. I don't know. So it's hard for me to say. I think the best advice I could give them is find their people. The only way you're going to find your people is by being a little bit vulnerable, by putting yourself out there. And that can be very scary for some people, but I think it's so necessary. Again, going back to that AI thing, it's very, very important that you find your people.
Sorry, we have one more question.
Oh, sorry. Hi, Joanne.
Hi.
My name is Nazneen. I've traveled for the US for the first time. I live in Dubai. I'm pretty nervous because I've never spoken in front of people. Might cry either.
That's okay.
I feel like this trip has meaning because I came all the way and I feel like I was meant to meet you today. And, thank you for being so vulnerable. And I'm sorry, I'm usually not this.
That's okay. No, thank you for coming all the way.
And thank you for being vulnerable because for people like me who have a hard time speaking about emotions at home, it really is a safe space.
It is.
And I've been following you since COVID, I think, and I was going through a lot, and I think it related mostly because I was going through friendship breakups, and not many people out there talk about how painful that is. So thank you for, being my online Ajuma auntie because I felt like someone's out there who cares enough because in my culture as well, we express through food, care, concern. I'm Indian, so we mainly feed to, make someone feel better. And I feel like I relate to Korean culture a lot. So I think it's a butterfly effect. I started cooking Korean food mainly. And now, believe it or not, the dishes are my comfort food now.
That's so beautiful.
So I really think I was meant to see you and talk to you like this and maybe even cry in front of strangers. But I'm really happy I was able to see you on this trip. It was my first trip. Oh my God. And you've never done a trip, book reading in DC?
No, I haven't.
So I really believe in
I think
fate.
it was meant to be. I think yes. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a Korean word like umyong. I think this is
Fate.
my umyong with you.
Yeah, I think everyone who's in this room was meant to be in this room and to hear your lovely, lovely story and your beautiful story and sharing with us. But thank you so much for coming all the way.
I did not plan to cry. I put makeup and everything so I don't cry and
I cry all the time too, so it's okay. I've been crying a lot during this book tour.
Because of your vulnerability, I was able to express myself as well. And like you said, said, words are really important, and people need to be really careful with the way they speak with words, and I feel like you are making a lot of difference, and I love your books. I love you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
This wasn't a question, sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Thank you to everyone coming out. Thank you so much, especially the city. It's been amazing. I've just loved it. The food is so incredible. We're going to go to Rishika afterwards. It's not an invitation, but sorry. But I'm just letting you know. I'm just giving you that update.
Yep. Thank you all so much. I think the organizers have some announcements. Yes.
Yes, that we do. Can we give it up one more time for Joanne and Daniela? Amazing. That might not have been a question, but I think that was the perfect way to wrap this up.